Hey guys, CC Report here, and it's the end of WNBA Free Agency day number 2. Things are really starting to wind down. A lot of the big names have either signed with new teams or re-signed with their old teams. Well, now we're starting to get a lot of the WNBA middle class signed to new teams or new contracts, and even some of the WNBA utility players and the fringe players are starting to find new homes. A lot of teams that were inactive yesterday are now starting to be very active. The Golden State Valkyries, for example, didn't really see much action in day number 1, but they started the day out by signing Gabby Williams. That was the first big acquisition of the day, and they have gone about essentially running it back with the entire team that they had last year for the most part. We had some continued signings around the league, including the Fever. The Fever announced 3 separate signings. None of these 3 signings were a surprise, but now the Fever are up to 9 filled roster slots out of their available 12 roster slots that they must eventually fill. So let's talk about those acquisitions. The first and probably most important acquisition of the day, not a surprise, but a lot of people were waiting for it. Sophie Cunningham has re-signed with the Fever on a 1-year contract. She is the X factor, her high energy level of play, her 3-point marksmanship. Last season was kind of marred by injury, both on the front end of the season and on the back end of the season. Her season was cut short in August by an MCL injury, but by all accounts, she is back and she is healthy and she is ready to go. And in that middle period where Sophie was playing healthy and was not hindered by that ankle injury that hindered her in the first month, she was setting career highs in basically every offensive statistic. She was a 3-point marksman. She was extremely valuable to the team. She played her way into a starting role, supplanting both Duana Bonner and then Lexi Hull in the starting lineup. She became an undeniable offensive force and somebody that the Fever really leaned on once Caitlin went down permanently with injury, and once we started becoming the hospital squad a little bit. We really leaned on Sophie's leadership. Her versatility was extremely valuable. Sophie even started at the point guard a number of times once it became clear that Caitlin was no longer going to be able to play for the rest of the season, and then Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson went down in the same game. Sophie Cunningham filled in as the emergency point guard until we were able to bring in suitable replacements. So Sophie, absolutely valuable to the team, in some ways the heartbeat of the team, and bringing her back was an essential move, absolutely essential move. A lot of people are asking why the 1-year contract, especially because it seemed like Sophie was prioritizing stability and was prioritizing the long term whenever she went on record as far as what she was looking for in her next contract. And to that, I have 2 answers. Number 1, as Alexa Philippou put it on Twitter earlier today, the Fever are operating under a salary crunch, not this year, but next year when Caitlin Clark's maximum salary is going to come due, Aaliyah Boston's max salary is going to come due, and obviously Kelsey Mitchell is still on the roster. And so any sort of flexibility that they can maintain in order to pay those 3 core players is flexibility that they are going to pursue. So that's number 1. If Sophie was willing, again, she is known to make sacrifices for the team. If Sophie was willing to sacrifice her multi-year deal in order to give the Fever financial options next offseason, that is something that is completely within her personality to do. So that's number 1. And the other thing is that Sophie's year last year was an extremely volatile one. I've already detailed to you what her performance was when she was healthy versus when she was not healthy. When you compare her performance when she was healthy last year to her performance in Phoenix in previous years, she was setting career highs in basically every offensive statistic, and that was without having Caitlin Clark as her point guard for the majority of her time with the Fever. We all know that Caitlin makes the players around her a lot better, and Sophie was a primary beneficiary of that when Caitlin was on the floor. We all remember the touchdown pass that Caitlin threw to Sophie in the Dallas Wings game in July last year. Plays like that are probably going to become a lot more commonplace for Sophie with Caitlin at the helm. Those types of plays are going to become more commonplace. And so from Sophie's perspective, it makes sense for her to sign a one-year deal now and look at her performance at the end of the year and be able to calculate better what is my net value, what is the type of contract that I'm looking for moving forward. Do I want to give the Fever a hometown discount again so that I can come back and continue to build on a potential championship core? Do I want to be a part of this in the long term? What are my financial obligations outside of the Fever? What are my financial arrangements outside of the Fever? Sophie has been an extremely big beneficiary of the Caitlin Clark effect in terms of her making money outside of the basketball court, thanks in large part to her relationship with Caitlin. So all of these things are factors that are unknowns at this point, but coming into next offseason, we will know, and she will know, and be able to make a better decision for the good of her own financial self-worth and for the good of the team as well. So Sophie's a Fever girl this year. At this point, that's all that matters. And moving forward, she's going to have a decision to make, and we are going to have a decision to make. But that's the number one signing. The additional signings that were announced officially by the team, we officially announced Ty Harris as the backup point guard. That's extremely exciting. I selected Ty Harris as my ideal backup point guard, and so to have her on the roster is great as far as I'm concerned. Super excited. A lot of the ball knowers online are calling this maybe the best signing of the offseason. So that's pretty cool. The final signing that was announced was Damiris Dantas officially being signed to the Indiana Fever. It was a signing for a 2-year, presumably unguaranteed veteran minimum contract. And that's exactly what we thought that it was going to be. I personally would not have made this move. Of all the moves that have been made so far, this is the only one that doesn't make sense to me. But she's a returner. She's already got a relationship with the team. She is a position of need for us. She is a 4 that can stretch the floor, assuming that her outside shot is hitting, which it wasn't last year. And again, it's an unprotected 2-year veteran minimum contract. Somebody's going to have to take that contract, so it might as well be her. And so I'm not mad at it. Those are the 3 signings that the Fever announced today. One of the signings that was not announced by the Fever today, and in fact who will not be returning to the Fever, is Natasha Howard. She has signed a 2-year contract with the Minnesota Lynx, who are in real big trouble in terms of what their team is going to look like next year. They are desperate for front court help. They lost their entire front court to the Dallas Wings, and so they are just looking for a veteran person to come in and start for them, especially while Napheesa Collier is injured. And they're going to pay Natasha Howard $700,000 a year for 2 years to do that. And wish her the best of luck. She last year played well enough for the Fever, but it never really felt like she was fitting into what the Fever ultimately wanted to do. So she is off to Minnesota, and that means that Monique Billings is going to be your starter at the 4 position for the Indiana Fever next year. There are a few moves yet to be made. We still need probably one more big to stretch the floor if we can possibly get one, either through the draft or through free agency. At the time of recording, Megan Gustafson has just been announced that she is signing with the Portland Fire, so she is no longer an option. Temi Fagbenley, who was an old face from the 2024 Fever, is still somebody that is out there, so we could potentially see a return of Temi. Bree Turner also is a name that could potentially return to the Fever. She would not necessarily be an ideal floor spacer, but she is a name that is out there that could potentially return for us, and I could see that move being made. But we can now pull out and take a look at the job that the front office has done as a whole. And to me, it's very clear that they entered this offseason with a very clear strategy. And I outlined my strategy for the offseason, which turned out to be very similar to what actually took place in my Feverpalooza article that I wrote prior to free agency. Re-signing Kelsey Mitchell is priority number 1. making sure that you're prioritizing future performance and not past performance. Prioritizing people that are returning to the squad over free agents that don't have experience with the Indiana Fever. Making sure that you're not overpaying for the value that you're going to be getting in the future. And finally, fifth and most importantly, I said that whoever the Fever signed, their strengths had to synergize with Caitlin Clark's abilities as a point guard. Those were the 5 keys that I put out as keys to a successful Fever offseason, and that is exactly what has happened. You go through and you look at all of the signings that were made: Lexi Hall, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, Monique Billings, Ty Harris. All of these signings that we have made, they're not the splashiest signing. They're not like the biggest names, except for Kelsey Mitchell, obviously, but they all are maximum synergy with Caitlin Clark, while at the same time not overpaying and breaking the bank for the future just to get people on board now. Let's look at Monique Billings specifically, because she is the biggest gamble that the front office is going to take. The gamble with Monique Billings, because she was not in a full-time starting role in the WNBA last year with the Golden State Valkyries. The gamble is that she will be able to handle this responsibility, and if she is able to handle this responsibility, it means that the Indiana Fever have found their power forward of the future on a significant discount, because the likelihood is that she signed, my estimate is probably around $650,000 to $700,000 per year. It is a multi-year deal. That is approximately 60% of what the Dallas Wings are going to pay Jessica Shepard, who is not better than Monique Billings, but she somehow went to Dallas on a near maximum contract for multiple years. That is an overpay. She is not as good as Alana Smith, who went to Dallas on a 3-year maximum contract in terms of defense. She's not as good as Alana Smith in terms of stretching the floor and being a 3-point shooter. But she is better than Alana Smith in a lot of different capacities. She is better than Alana Smith in terms of running the floor. She is better than Alana Smith in terms of rim conversion. Her 81% rim conversion rate is outstanding. And so you look at that, there is no way that Monique Billings is only 60% as good as Alana Smith. That is an overpay. And the reason that it is important to be financially disciplined with the signing of Monique Billings and the rest of the signings that the Fever undertook is because next year, Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, and Aaliyah Boston will all need to get paid. That is clearly the long-term financial goal of the Indiana Fever, is to keep all 3 of them on board, not just for this year, but for years to come, until all of them decide that it is time to retire. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you are being financially responsible and finding value with the rest of your signings. Monique Billings is a value signing, because if she pans out, you have found your power forward of the future. That is why Amber Cox was down in San Juan scouting Monique Billings, because she wanted to make sure in person that Monique Billings was worth the gamble. And what did we see down in San Juan? We saw perfect or near perfect synergy between Monique Billings and Caitlin Clark. We saw exactly the type of power forward that synergizes well with Caitlin Clark's skills. We saw a power forward that converts basically every pass that Caitlin Clark passes to her in the paint. We saw a perfect pick and roll partner who sets excellent screens for Caitlin Clark and who was able to roll off of those screens to the basket and convert at a high percentage rate. We saw a power forward that is able to sprint the floor and convert touchdown passes from Caitlin Clark. These are all skills incredibly important, and if the Fever are able to capture those skills at a low cost, it is a good investment and it is a good gamble, because the priority is to make sure that they can bring the core 3 back for multiple years, not just for this year. The Fever were successful in doing this. They were able to capture Monique Billings on a multi-year contract, and they were able to do it at a significant discount. If they had gone and signed Alana Smith, she is a better player than Monique Billings right now. But her signing would break the bank, and that signing alone, if we were to duplicate the offer that Dallas gave her, that signing alone would completely eliminate the possibility of bringing Kelsey Mitchell back next year. It would completely eliminate the possibility of running the core three back in perpetuity. And so that is what I mean when I say that it is extremely important for the Fever to remain financially disciplined and to find value picks and lock those value picks down for multiple years, because in so doing, they enable the Fever to accomplish their long-term goal, which is to bring the core three back next year and in years to come. And that is what they have successfully done. We are going to gamble on Monique Billings' upside, especially her upside with Caitlin Clark. We are going to gamble that Sophie Cunningham is willing to return to the Fever after a successful year with the Fever this year. We are going to gamble on Lexi Hull's upside, and we are going to see. There is always the chance that the gamble doesn't work out. Maybe Monique Billings is terrible. Who knows? But that is a gamble that the front office has been willing to take, and in my opinion, I think it's a good gamble. Again, the front office's job is not complete. We still have 3 more roster spots. We've got the WNBA draft tomorrow to fill those roster spots, and with the combination of the draft and with the rest of free agency, Temi Fegbenle is still out there. We can still bring her in, assuming that she's at an affordable price point. But we're going to see what all that looks like. Right now, in terms of the front office's performance for free agency, it's not a big performance. It's not a splashy performance. The Dallas Wings GM has done a lot of wheeling and dealing. The Chicago Sky's GM, a lot of wheeling and dealing there. The Los Angeles Sparks GM, a lot of wheeling and dealing there. There's been a lot of smoke from those franchises, but there's not necessarily been a lot of fire there. I don't know how much better those franchises have gotten relative to what they were before. The Fever's offseason strategy has been a lot different. Their strategy has been to surgically snipe identified targets and specifically pick out the players that they wish to sign and go at them hard. I think it's pretty likely that Monique Billings was always the Fever's #1 target in the offseason. I think it's pretty likely that Ty Harris has been identified for an extremely long time as the backup point guard of choice. And they targeted those players, and they went out and they got them, and then they returned the rest of the roster, which has been the strategy of all of the championship contenders, to run it back and then add one. And the one for the Liberty was a lot splashier than Monique Billings and Satu Sabally. The one in Atlanta was a lot splashier than Monique Billings and Angel Reese. But it's possible that the one of the Indiana Fever is the best complement to the rest of the team in Monique Billings. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's been the CC Report. Ultimately, I think this front office has done a very good job in a challenging offseason. Its job's still not done. We still have the draft, and we still have a couple of holes yet to fill, but that is my evaluation on how everything is shaken out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you like and subscribe to this video. If you enjoyed it, share it around. I will catch you guys later. We'll talk to you tomorrow after the WNBA draft, and we'll see you then. Okay, bye!